So coming up in about 2 to 3 weeks time is going to be UFC Fight Night Ankalaev versus Walker, which is going to be the first card of 2024. And as you guys can see, I am going to be giving my predictions away from home using my temporary setup that I do have here over the Christmas holiday season. But in just a few days time, I will be back and getting back into it. So let's give my early predictions for this card. I'm looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be a good card. There's quite a few good prospects on here. I'm expecting quite a few finishes as well. And we've got a pretty decent pay-per-view coming up as well. UFC 297 just coming up soon after this one. So I think this could be a card that's going to lean into what we could expect in 2024, which I think is going to be a lot of really good MMA. And a fighter that I'm hoping has a big 2024 is none other than Tom Nolan. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of Tom Nolan. I picked him on Dana White's Contender Series when, for some reason, not many people did, and he won by KO in the first round. I think he's going to win by KO over Nikolas Motta in the first or the second round. There's quite a few variables to this. The main one is the size between these two is going to be absolutely insane. Tom Nolan is big for 155. He's 6'3" with a 76-inch reach, so he's tall, one of the tallest lightweights there is on the roster, and I don't think Nikolas Motta is a very big lightweight at all. And even then, we've seen Nikolas Motta knocked out before, we've seen him caught before. What Nikolas Motta does bring is some pretty solid boxing and some good striking, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to get past Tom Nolan. Tom Nolan has the reach, he's got good kicks, he's just really good. He reminds me of Dan Hooker in a way. He can grapple, and for someone that's so big for the weight class, he does have good cardio. He can go 3 rounds if he needs to. I've seen Nikolas Motta get caught before. I think he's going to get caught again. I think we see Tom Nolan knock out Nikolas Motta in the first 2 rounds. It's a pretty confident pick. I think Nolan's a good prospect. I'd love to see him fight like 3 times in 2024. That would be awesome. Now we've got Felipe Bunes taking on Joshua Van. This is a short notice matchup. I believe it is Joshua Van that has taken this fight on short notice, as Bunes was meant to take on Dennis Bondar. I was leaning towards Bunes in this fight, but now I'm going to be leaning towards Joshua Van in this one here. And the reason why is I think he's just the better boxer. Felipe Bunes is a much better fighter than his record does suggest. He's got pretty good Muay Thai and pretty good grappling as well. He has fought all around the world, and he's actually fought a very high level of competition before he ended up getting that UFC contract when he was meant to take on Zhalgas Shimagulov. But he wasn't able to make that short notice fight because I believe he had some USADA complications. But he was pretty clear with it. He did come out and say what was going on, but who really knows? Maybe he was cleared because he's maybe making a comeback very soon. But yeah, he did have a situation like that. He has fought some top guys over on the other side of the world, over there in Russia. But Joshua Van is not very big for 125 at all. And he has been outsized in quite a few of his fights, mainly on the regional scene. He came into the UFC on short notice himself against Zhalgas. One, it looked really impressive despite that being a split decision, and then beat Kevin Borjas in what was a pretty fun fight. He did get caught in that matchup. Borjas did ultimately get outstruck by him though, and Joshua Van was able to win the decision. I don't see Bunes being able to get this fight down to the ground, which he probably will want to, and I think that Joshua Van is a good enough boxer to be able to close the distance and crowd Felipe Bunes so he can't get off his Muay Thai kicks. So I am going to go with Joshua Van. This is a low confidence pick though, as I do rate Bunes pretty highly. I don't see Joshua Van out wrestling Bunes, which is how he has lost in the past. So let's see how this goes. I think it's going to be an all-striking matchup, but I think the boxing of Van is going to be good enough to get past Bunes. But don't underrate Bunes here, especially if the odds are pretty wide. Speaking of wide odds, Gene Silva is minus 800 against Westin Wilson. And I'm genuinely not surprised. Westin Wilson is 6'1" at 145, which is impressive. I mean, he's really tall for this weight class. But I don't like his striking at all. Westin Wilson's a grappler, but he strikes kind of like Wonder Boy. He's got a karate stance, and his hands are really, really low. But he's not fast enough to be able to pull it off. He doesn't have good head movement. He's got no head movement at all, should I say. And I've seen him get KO'd before, and KO'd pretty badly. And the way that Gene Silva fights is this guy is an absolute Terminator. This guy will just come forward and throw bombs. That's what he did against Kevin Vallejos. He ended up winning a decision. Before that, his cardio was a question mark. I had no idea how good his cardio was, but he was just knocking people out silly. Coming out there against Vallejos, outboxed Vallejos, just outstruck Vallejos. Incredible performance. I thought Vallejos was going to beat him. I will come out and say that. I think he knocks out Westin in the first round. Man, I just don't think Wilson's striking is just not good enough to deal with someone with the power of Jun Silva. I don't like this fight for Wilson. I think if Wilson, I don't like it. I'm just going to move on from this. I think Silva knocks him out in the first or the second round. Now we've got Farid Basharat taking on Taylor Lapilus. And the odds, in my opinion, are pretty wide here. You see Farid Basharat minus 175, Taylor Lapilus plus 145. I am picking Farid Basharat, but I think the odds are a little bit wide. I don't like him at minus 175 at all. I did go back and watch Taylor Lapilus against Cowlin Loughran because I did see some people trying to make the argument that Cowlin Loughran could have won that fight based off the last 2 rounds. I think you give Loughran the second round as he out-wrestled Lapilus pretty clearly, but I don't know if he did enough to win the third round against Taylor Lapilus. But Loughran was preparing for a different opponent, so was Lapilus. That was a short notice put together fight. Wasn't the best performance from Lapilus after he'd beaten some really good guys on the regional scene, but he had been pretty inactive. He beat Demarte Pena, who I believe has failed like 25 USADA tests or something like that. But yeah. Now Farid Basharat, he was obviously the brother of Javid Basharat. Not to get confused with him, he won on the Contender Series by out-wrestling Alan Bagoso, who's a dangerous, small guy for the weight class. He beat Damon Blackshear, well-aging win. Now Damon Blackshear has lost since then, but it was a short-notice fight to Mario Bautista, which he made competitive. And he beat Clayton Rodriguez in the first round. Nobody really does that. Clayton Rodriguez is a solid prospect. He's a good fighter. I wish he could make 125, as I don't like him at bantamweight, but that's not the story of this fight. The story of this fight is that Taylor Lapilus is a kickboxer, and you could liken him to someone like Leon Edwards, where he's a good striker with incredible accuracy. That's one thing that Leon Edwards and Taylor Lapilus do share in common, is relatively low volume, but really good accuracy and really good takedown defense. But I don't think that takedown defense is actually going to be enough to defend the takedowns of Farid Basharat. So I'm going to go with Farid here. And it's a low confidence pick. I'm going to go with Farid by decision by out-wrestling Taylor Lapilus. I do believe he can get Taylor Lapilus down to the ground. But if you don't believe Farid Basharat gets Taylor Lapilus down to the ground, I think Taylor Lapilus could be a smart underdog pick here. I'm going to go with Farid Basharat though. Low confidence pick again. And then we can move on to Marcus McGhee taking on Gaston Bolanos. What an interesting fight this is. I really like Marcus McGhee in it though. Now Gaston Bolanos was, to be honest, in my opinion, a really odd signing for the UFC. But I guess he had quite a bit of hype behind him, and the UFC is trying to sign fighters from Peru at the moment. So yeah, they signed him. He was 1-2 in his last couple of fights to guys in Bellator. And 6-3 at the time, took on Aaron Phillips. And some people think Aaron Phillips may have got the decision. I thought Gaston Bolanos won it though. I thought he did enough damage on the feet. But that's what Gaston Bolanos is. He's a pure striker, but he's very exciting. He can throw flying knees, he can throw spinning kicks, he can throw spinning back fists, he can do it all. He's got a crazy highlight reel over there in Bellator. Had a good UFC debut against Phillips. He won the fight. It wasn't the most impressive performance, but he won the fight. I'm more impressed by Marcus McGhee. Now, in a pure striking fight, this fight could get interesting, and I do think this is going to be a pure striking fight. But if someone is going to wrestle, it probably would be Marcus McGhee. I've seen Marcus McGhee get that submission over Journey Newsom, which he took on short notice, smoked Journey Newsom on short notice on the feet, and then subbed him, and then knocked out poor JP Bays. Marcus McGhee is the real deal, man. I remember watching his fight against Luciano Ramos live. Luciano Ramos is a Nate Diaz guy. That was a funny fight to watch. I'm going to be honest. I mean, it was entertaining. But anyway, McGhee is the pick. I like his size. I like McGee's striking. Bolanos is dangerous. That's what I'm going to say this right now. This is more of a medium confidence pick for McGhee. I think you've got to respect the fact that Bolanos can knock you out. He does have power. But I think McGhee, we have never really seen it. But McGhee is going to be the better wrestler. Bolanos' defensive wrestling is horrible. So let's go with McGhee here in this matchup. And I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw at least one takedown out of McGhee. Matthew Semelsberger taking on Preston Parsons. I don't like picking Matthew Semelsberger anymore, guys. This guy has let me down too many times. He has he's the worst fight IQ in the UFC. Matthew Semelsberger, watch his fight against Jeremiah Wells. It will be the most frustrating thing you have ever seen. He had so many opportunities to finish the fight against Jeremiah Wells that he just let go, that he just let happen, and Wells ended up winning a split decision by out-wrestling him. Where if he didn't engage with Wells in the wrestling after hurting him, he would have won the fight by knockout. He could have just let Wells stand up and put him down again like he did multiple times in that fight. And then he lost to Uroš Medic. I think I picked Medic in that fight. I just don't trust Matt Semelsberger, to be honest with you guys. That's really what it comes down to. I think Matt Semelsberger is a good fighter. We've seen Matt Semelsberger look really good before. He outboxed Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews was coming off that win over Andrei Fialho on the feet. We didn't even know Jake Matthews had that striking in him, but Jake Matthews just went out there and lost to Semelsberger. Now Semelsberger's on a 2-fight losing streak because of his fight IQ. It's unbelievable to me. But Preston Parsons is a guy that's had a very interesting career because he lost to Daniel Rodriguez in the first round, and then he beat Evan Elder, who took him on short notice, and then he lost to Trevin Giles in a split decision that maybe some people think he could have won. But Giles' jab looked pretty good in that fight. The pick Semelsberger by knockout, but my goodness, guys, do not put your money on this fight. You cannot trust Semelsberger. You cannot trust that man. He's burned me too many times. I'm going to move on. That was a horrible breakdown, but what can you do for a Semelsberger fight? Anyway, we've got Andrei Arlovski taking on Waldo Cortes-Acosta. They're giving Waldo Cortes-Acosta the Andrei Arlovski test. That's what it comes down to. Andrei Arlovski is just the guy that the UFC at heavyweight is just testing all these prospects. You know, he took on Carlos Felipe, got past him. Jared Vandera got past him. Jake Collier got past him, and he's lost to some of the guys that were able to pass the Arlovski test, I guess you could say. I think Waldo Cortes-Acosta passes the Arlovski test, and I think he passes it by KO. And that does hurt to say, because I do like Arlovski, man. I mean, this guy has finessed the UFC. I don't know if you guys know this, but Arlovski gets paid like $350,000 just to show up. I gotta respect, that's why he fights so often. I respect the man. He's chasing the bag, and he is getting the bag at almost 45 years old in MMA. You don't really see that. I mean, it's kind of crazy, I'll be honest. But yeah, Waldo Cortes-Acosta, we know him for one thing and one thing only. He's a boxer. He doesn't defend leg kicks. He doesn't have good wrestling. He's a boxer. He's a decent boxer at heavyweight. He's not really the best, but he's good enough. And he is pretty good, to be fair. I think he's got the power to knock out Arlovski. We saw Arlovski manage to knock himself out by Marcos Rogério de Lima. If you watch that fight, he gets in an exchange with Marcos Rogério de Lima and gets knocked down. But if you watch the replay in slow-mo, Arlovski got hit by nothing. I think he just knocked himself out with whiplash. So, I don't know, man. I feel like Waldo Cortes-Acosta could just let Arlovski swing and miss, and he might finish himself. Who knows? I've got Cortes-Acosta by KO. Let's see how it goes, man. I'm pretty confident he wins, to be honest. Now we've got Phil Hawes taking on Brunno Ferreira. Let's move on to a fight which I'm not confident in whatsoever, and there is only one reason why I am picking who I'm picking. Phil Hawes has no chin. That's why I'm picking Brunno Ferreira. That's literally it. Phil Hawes could go out there and beat Brunno Ferreira easily. He is a really good fighter. Phil Hawes just has no chin. That's what it comes down to. Honestly, Phil Hawes is a really good wrestler. Has a great wrestling background. His striking isn't the best, but it's good enough to get by enough guys at 185 pounds to then work in his wrestling that he does have. But this guy gets touched, and he gets hurt, he gets wobbled, he gets knocked down, Ikram Aliskerov put him out badly with a right cross that almost looked like it was a jab. Roma Deludze knocked him out. Chris Curtis knocked him out on short notice. He beat Duran Win, but it's Duran Win. Anyway, Duran Win's like 5'6" at 185. I don't even know if that counts. So yeah, Brunno Ferreira is a striker that honestly isn't actually that technical at striking. He does throw a lot of hooks, but he just bombs, man, and he's got all that power, and I think all it's going to take is just one to land on Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes, he just has no chin. This guy cannot take a punch, And because he can't take a punch, I mean, I'll be surprised if he's hard sparring at this point in his career. I think Brunno Ferreira's going to go out there and just hit him hard and knock him out. Do I see Brunno Ferreira losing? Yeah. Phil Hawes is probably the smart pick. Phil Hawes is the better fighter in this matchup. That's true. Phil Hawes could easily out-wrestle Brunno Ferreira. Absolutely no problems whatsoever. But at the end of the day, he just can't take a shot. And Brunno Ferreira has the power, and he can land shots. I think he's going to knock out Phil Hawes. Why is 84% of people in Tapology picking him? That's nuts. That is actually crazy. Okay, I thought I might have been in the minority there, but I'm obviously not. Hey, okay, it is what it is. Ricky Simone taking on Mario Bautista. I've got Ricky Simone here. I actually expected him to be the underdog, which is interesting, but I guess it does make sense. Mario Bautista's a really good fighter, and he's been on this crazy win streak, which is incredible. But at the end of the day, he's not really beating the best guys. He beat Damon Blackshear on short notice, a good win, but some people think Blackshear may have been able to steal it. I thought Bautista won it, I'll be honest. And then we got Guido Canetti, who was 43 at the time. Why did they do that matchup in hindsight? Benito Lopez, his first fight in years after he became a real estate agent. Brian Kelleher, who's like 35 years old, 36, 37. Maybe he might be older than that. And he's, yeah, just anyway. And Jay Perrin. These guys are bottom of the bottom at 135. Now, don't get me wrong. Bantamweight is an incredibly talented weight class, and he's done well to go on the win streak that he has. But Ricky Simone's beaten the much better guys, man. He's beaten Jack Shaw, who was 16-0. That was a good pick by me. A lot of people were on Shaw in that fight. A Sun Sal, who was old, but he still kind of had it at that time, I guess. Kelleher himself, okay, fair enough. And then Gaetano Perello, who's a decent kickboxer. I think he was from Belgium or Germany, one of the two. He lost to Song Yadong. Song Yadong smoked him, let's be honest. But I think he's good enough to get past Mario Bautista. Mario Bautista is a boxer-wrestler. I think Ricky Simone is going to be a good enough wrestler to take down Mario Bautista. And I think that's just kind of what it comes down to. I think Ricky Simone's boxing is going to be good enough. I think he can deal with Mario Bautista. On the feet, I don't think he's going to be outmatched that much. In fact, he might not even be. So let's see. I think Ricky Simone gets it done. I think he gets it done by decision. Now let's move on to Ketlen Vieira versus Macy Chiasson. The odds on this should be, is Macy Chiasson going to make 135? I should have looked at this before I recorded the video, but I am pretty confident in saying that Macy Chiasson has never made 135 pounds. Why? Okay, I guess maybe a lot of these fights were at 145. Was there a no fight at 135? She made 135. Okay, so the last time she made 135 was probably a couple of years ago. I just can't see her doing it, man. Macy Chiasson is massive for this weight class. She's huge. She's even pretty big for 145. Like, she is a natural featherweight. Now she's going to be trying to make bantamweight because I'm pretty confident the UFC has cut the women's featherweight division, which probably is for the best, let's be honest. I mean, I've had all this talk about Chiasson making the weight. What happens if she makes the weight and comes to the fight? I don't like Chiasson's cardio, and I think Ketlen Vieira is going to be good enough to deal with her. I think Ketlen Vieira is pretty decent at striking. She's not the best, but she is pretty strong in the clinch. So is Macy Chiasson, though, to be fair. Macy Chiasson doesn't have very good cardio. We did see her look really good against Irene Aldana, though, before she did get TKO'd with that up kick. She got past Norma Dumont in a fight that was honestly just a bad performance from Dumont. That was a low IQ matchup for Dumont. It just kind of comes down to this. Ketlen Vieira just come off the win over Penny Kianzad. Looked pretty good. I mean, Penny Kianzad was on a bit of a run before then. Lost a split to Raquel Pennington, who's now fighting for the title. And before that, got past Holly Holm in a pretty good fight. And yeah, I was going to say, she beat Misha Tate as well. I thought that was pretty recent too. Ketlen Vieira is a decent striker. She does have power in her hands. She can clinch against the cage, which is what a lot of women's bantamweights love to do. Chiasson included. I think she should just be good enough to get past Chiasson. I think Chiasson's cardio is going to fail her, especially if she's trying to make 135 again, which she is. I like Vieira by decision. Now let's move on to a pretty fun fight, to be honest with you. Jim Miller taking on Gabriel Benitez. But this is giving me a bit of PTSD. I'm going to be honest. A bit of PTSD. This is a little bit of a throwback to perhaps the worst Artem MMA pick of all time. The Charlie Ontiveros fight. I picked Charlie Ontiveros to beat Gabriel Benitez. Now, my reasoning was good. I thought. And to be honest, the fight was kind of playing out the way that I thought it was going to. But yeah, Benitez knocked him out. But anyway, let's move on from there. Let's move on from that awkward moment in the, I guess, the YouTube career of mine. I think Jim Miller beats Gabriel Benitez. Gabriel Benitez is a former featherweight. I think he has just moved up to 155 when he took on Ontiveros. He didn't look very big, but to be fair, Ontiveros is like 6'2", 6'3" at this weight class, which is nuts. And I think Benitez, he's chinny as well. That's why I picked Ontiveros. I remember now. Yes, I mean, of course, Benitez has been finished multiple times in his career. I believe he's been finished 8 times. Jim Miller's still kind of got it. A very competitive fight with Alexander Hernandez. A win over a win over Donald Cerrone, which is pretty good. Nikolas Motta beat him, who's now on this card. Jim Miller's still got it, and for some reason his striking has gotten better, but we know him for his grappling. That's what he's best at. I think he can outmuscle Gabriel Benitez. I think he can take down Gabriel Benitez and win probably by submission. Honestly, I think that's how he gets it done, or decision by out-wrestling Benitez. I think Jim Miller's still got a bit in him. Gabriel Benitez does kind of as well, but I think Jim Miller gets past him. I see Jim Miller out-muscling him, out-wrestling him, getting him down to the ground, and just kind of controlling the fight from there. If he wants to strike with Benitez, that's going to be dangerous. I mean, Charlie Ontiveros felt the wrath of Gabriel Benitez, but now we've got the co-main event. This is a banger, man. This should be in front of a crowd. They could have done this at UFC 297, honestly. Matheus Nicolau taking on Manel Kape, a big rematch from way back in the day, almost 3 years ago now, when Manel Kape was first coming into the UFC after his run with Ryzen. He took on, I believe it was Pantoja and Nicolau, lost to them both in relatively controversial decisions, and then went on a pretty good win streak since then. And I do think he gets past Nicolau the second time. I think we've seen improvements in Manel Kape. I think Manel Kape come into the UFC. I think the UFC... I don't think the fans overrated Manel Kape. I think the UFC overrated Manel Kape because they gave him Nicolau and Pantoja. In hindsight, that's 2 very hard fights to come into the UFC with. And I think Manel Kape can outstrike Matheus Nicolau. I think Nicolau's really good. He has got some good wins. I mean, he had that banger with Matt Schnell where he ended up finishing him. Beat David Vorjak, but that win has aged pretty badly. And he beat Tim Elliott, and that was a good win over Tim Elliott. But he got knocked out by Royval. Now, that does happen, though, to be fair, but it was a good KO by Royval. I think Manel Kape just outstrikes him for 3 rounds. One thing I will say, though, is Felipe Dos Santos. I'm a massive Felipe Dos Santos fan. I could talk about Felipe Dos Santos for half an hour. That fight shouldn't have been as competitive as it was. I'm just going to be honest. That Felipe Dos Santos looked really good in that fight. He shouldn't have looked that good. So Kape, I don't know, not the best performance. He said he was sick or something like that. He said he was injured. But I think the Kape that showed up against Felipe Dos Santos would have lost to Kai Kara-France. But yeah, honestly, with the way that this fight plans out, I want to see Kape win. I'm picking Kape to win. That's not why I'm picking him to win. I do genuinely think he can outstrike Nicolau for 3 rounds. I want to see him fight Pantoja next. I mean, Brandon Moreno's going to probably potentially beat Albazi, but do we give him another title shot? I don't know, man. Like, I think maybe we should just get a little bit of movement going. Let's do Pantoja versus Kape ASAP after Kape hopefully wins. Otherwise, it's going to be Moreno if Nicolau wins. But hey, let's see what goes on. I'm picking Kape. Not that confident. I mean, I'm medium confident. Some medium confidence in Kape. I think he's good enough. I think he's going to outstrike Nicolau. I think he can get that win back that he lost. And now we can move on to the main event. Ankalaev taking on Johnny Walker in a rematch. This is awkward, man. Let me know in the comments below. Genuinely, let me know in the comments below. If Ankalaev beats Johnny Walker, does he get a title shot? I'm gonna say no. I don't think they do. I don't think they give him a title shot, man. I thought he lost to Jan. I thought Jan beat him. I thought Jan won rounds 1, 2, and 3. And I thought the 5th was only a 10-9. I don't think it was dominance enough to give him a 10-8 in that matchup. But I am going to pick Ankalaev here. I think Ankalaev is, to be honest though, one of the most boring fighters on the roster. And I'm really sad that the UFC didn't learn from what they did with him versus Thiago Santos. Only last year. Wasn't even that long ago. Man, dude, does the UFC have goldfish minds? Because when that fight was happening, I thought they're never going to give him a main event again. this fight was so boring against Thiago Santos, they're never going to give Ankalaev a main event again. But here we are. Yes, I'm picking Ankalaev by boring decision. I actually believe that Ankalaev is one of the most boring fighters on the roster. I just don't know how he does it. He used to be fun, but he just kind of lost it all. And I guess Johnny Walker is pretty exciting still. Can Walker knock him out? Probably. We've seen weaknesses in Ankalaev's game. His leg kick defense isn't the best. He can get subbed. I mean, that only ever happened once, though. And he probably can get caught on the chin by Johnny Walker. I mean, obviously this is the rematch from the knee to the head, which was just kind of in a weird situation when Walker said he was in the desert. And let's be honest, Johnny Walker, English is not Johnny Walker's first language. Why is a doctor that can only speak English asking Walker in English where he is? You know, like I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking, like, maybe Johnny Walker didn't really understand the question. He doesn't speak fluent English. It's not like a fluent language for him. So, anyways, I can see Johnny Walker winning, but the pick is Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev just out-wrestles him. We did see him outstrike Santos, but that fight was so low volume. I don't even know how he did it. I actually don't know how he does it. I don't know how Ankalaev repeatedly puts on horrendously boring fights. It's actually incredible to me, and could be something that should be studied, because I think the UFC needs to kind of have a look at the mistake that they made when they signed him, and never do it again. Because he is ruining events, and this main event, if it ends up being good, I'm not going to eat my words because of what he did to Thiago Santos. But I'm just going to say, I don't think Ankalaev should ever be the main event ever, to be honest. But anyway, I'm going to end the video there. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for watching.